All right, this is another TBX, AC36 TBX, the made in UK stuff. And before I can get started on pulling all the other things that need to be pulled, several of the tube sockets have these burn marks from stray soldering irons, and this one's interfering with one of the heater pins. These things aren't the best anyway. See the previous one where I had to replace these. So this one's getting replaced too. So I've got to go in here and snip these out. But I'm not going to use these snippers. These are my good ones. Let's see. Here are some older ones. In here and just start cutting. This seems crude, but it's really the only way to do this effectively without going to a lot of trouble, because once I get all but one of these cut, I only have to desolder the one thing for the socket to come up. Then it's real easy to desolder the individual pins. I'm not having to heat up a bunch of stuff at once. And maybe there's a desoldering station that does a better job, but what I've got never gets all of it. It only takes a little bit to stop it from coming out. So I'm gonna get all these out and report back. It's a pain in the butt to do. Okay, about 30 minutes later, and all 6 of the old tube sockets are out. All the old solder's out, all the flux is off the board, and none of the pads and traces where the tube sockets are attached had any damage. None are lifted up from the board. So when I put the new belt and sockets in, everything will be rock solid and good to go. There's some old little bits of solder, not solder, but glue here and there on the board that I'll be getting up, mostly on the other side. But so this was an unscheduled part of this repair, but it only added about 30 minutes, and 6 new tube sockets are only about 18, 20 bucks. No big deal there. So on to the regularly scheduled things that I expected to rip out. Next thing up on the list, all these old electrolytic caps from the 90s are gonna get changed out for some nice new ones. All right, everything is out that needs to come out. And before I cut some traces and start repopulating, I've got to go through and inspect all the factory solder joints. As I've been doing this, I've noticed a lot of bad ones. Get this to focus. The amp is just chock full of solder joints like this from the factory. The worst offender was this red wire bringing the B plus from the rectifier tube to the amp supply itself. The actual power that had never been soldered. That wire was just rusting inside the hole in the board. So that's not too good. But fortunately that is fixable, and I've already fixed that one because I didn't want that wire pulling out while I was moving the board around. But there are a lot of substandard solder joints in here. So I'm going to get this to focus better. It's hard to get pictures of solder joints for some reason. The camera just spazzes out and doesn't have a good depth on them. But you can see that one's partially broken right there. And just throughout the entire thing. Just got to go through and find all the yucky ones. Things like that, where there's a ring around it. That's a break. Anyway, I don't want to belabor the point, but there are a few dozen here that I saw along the way that just need to be reflowed before I start to rebuild. Reflowed before I rebuild. All right. While I'm waiting for the new preamp tube sockets to arrive, hopefully today, everything else that was getting changed out has been changed out. I've got some new ground wires on the board to go where they're going to go. And next up, to redo the heater wiring on the output tubes. You can see I've cut these red and black wires. They used to go to these traces on the board, which are no longer carrying the heater supply because that was a terrible, terrible design. So some new wire is going to go in on the output tube socket heaters, and then after the preamp tube sockets are replaced, new tightly twisted heaters will go across the entire board, at which point we can hear this thing. All right, everything put back in place. I'll put some tubes in this and fire it up in a little bit, but I got some other stuff to do first. But I thought this was a good stopping point, and I'll show the rest when we hear it. I know this is a short video. It represents a lot of work, but it would totally be worth it. Or I hope so. We'll find out when I turn it on for the first time, right?